Welcome, my lovely viewers, in this program. This is lesson 4. In lesson 1, we looked at the background of the author. In lesson 2, we looked at the title, the different meanings of the title and how we can interpret the title, Parliament of Owls. And lesson 3, we looked at the setting of the play. Now we are ready to get deeper into the text and its analysis. And we start with the plot. And in analyzing plot, we are supposed to look at not only the acts and how they progress, but we want to look at generally the general synopsis of the play. What is it about? So that when we are getting deeper into the text, we'll be looking at those milestones. Are they being achieved and where are they being achieved? So that by the time we are getting to the climax of the story, we are able to tell that this is a climax, and therefore now we are headed to the resolution in this text. Remember, in every plot, there are 5 areas or 5 points. Number 1, we have exposition. Exposition is where the story begins, where we are exposed. The word exposition comes from the word expose, where we are exposed to the characters, the setting, and the plot in general. Then we go to another level, and that's when we start climbing. We go to what we call the conflict. The conflict of a story is where issues arise and they need to be resolved. It doesn't mean a physical confrontation. It simply means a clash of ideas, a clash of activities, a clash of intentions. And it could also be internal, where the character is going through different phases and trying to solve his own issues that arise out of maybe what he is coming across. Then this conflict rises all the way to what we call the climax. The climax is the key point where the story is most tense and where we are asking the question, what is going to happen next? It is where the major conflicts are resolved, or the major conflicts now come to the cropper. Then we go down the cliff, which is called the anticlimax. This is where the story is still developing, but we have already hit the peak of a story, and therefore most of the activities have already been resolved or they have already been abandoned. And then we have another flat area that is called resolution. We don't have a solution in a story, we have a resolution. Resolution comes from how are the conflicts resolved, how are the conflicts brought to an end. So we are looking at those 5 points in the plot development. Remember, plot is the development of the events, the activities in a story from the beginning of the play to the end of the play. Now, we look at the synopsis. Synopsis from your paper 1, you already know, is a summary. It is the key points or the key milestones of a story. I want to look at the plot of Parliament of Owls by Odipo Sidang, and I will be looking at the general issues or the general synopsis, and then I will go to the acts. Now, let's start with the general one. Parliament of Owls. And before I get deeper into it, I need to say an introduction here that Parliament of Owls by Odipo Sidang is a political allegory. What is an allegory? It is a story that uses symbolic events or characters to give a political message or a moral message. It is like a parable, and parable is not new to you. You have that in the holy books, and especially are stories told in order to teach a lesson. In the Bible, it is teaching a religious lesson, a spiritual lesson. In these texts, a parliament of owls, it is giving us a political message. So it delves, this allegory delves into themes of power, themes of corruption, and theme of resistance. And it is told in 4 phases. The phase 1 is the exposition of the conflict, where Osogo and Red String meet, and we are exposed to the conflicts that are eating or going through in this bird's kingdom. In the bird's kingdom, birds are classified according to the role they are playing in the story. There are those in power, majorly the owls who are in power. No wonder the book is called, or the play is called, Parliament of Owls, because it is owned by owls. It is doing the bidding of the owls. It is just propagating the interest of the owls. And then we have another group who are collaborating with the ones in power. And then we have the last group of birds who are now being led, being ruled by the owls. So we have those 3 categories of birds. So those on one extreme in leadership, and those are the ones that we are considering corrupt. They are manipulating laws, and they are pulling resources to their side. And then we have the middle ones who are collaborating with those ones who are in power. They are not in power, but they are collaborating with those ones in power. Arumtidi. They are collaborating. And at one point, Telltale is also collaborating with those ones in power to propagate their agenda. And then we have the ones on the other extreme, led by Oyundi, Osogo, and other birds who are opposed to the power that are. Therefore, we have those categories of birds. And then I said the story is developing in 4 stages. The stage 1 is where we are exposed to the conflict. And then the number 2 is escalation of the conflict, where now these people or these birds in power and those ones who are opposing the power are coming now to clash. And this clash is going to bring some results. So there are those who are in power, and therefore there is escalation. They are making new laws. They are making new developments to oppress the birds who are not in power and to amass wealth unto themselves, and also resources, other resources other than just the wealth. So there is that escalation. So there is exposure of conflict. Then we come to the escalation of the conflict, and then there is the peak of the conflict, where those ones who are in power are. In Act 1 is just exposition. In Act 2 we have now the escalation part, and part of Part 3 is escalation. And then there is a struggle, the final struggle, what I can call the final struggle. And finally, Act 5 is the enthronement of Osundi. Therefore, I will look at the things that are going on later on. So through the series of the 5 acts, the play reveals to us, unravels the evil tactics employed by owls to maintain control and the determined attempts of the birds to reclaim their rightful position in the society by fighting for their rights and their freedom. The play, as we see, it opens on page 1 with a dull atmosphere, where we are told that Osogo, perched on a stone, he is engrossed in his flute It is melancholic tune. So he is playing his flute. Remember that Osogo is a flute player. And we will see him using the flute to communicate or to bring, to rally birds together, or even to communicate the tension in the play. So he is mourning his 33 friends who have been killed by the owls. Then we see Red String coming in. Red String is coming in on page 1, and we see him, we learn from Osogo that he has broken the same rules that Parliament has been putting in place. We are told by Osogo, it is not even dusk. So the owls are only supposed to come out of their zones, out of their residence in dusk or during dusk. Then he is told, you break the same rules, your parliament, not the word your parliament that brings out conflict, your parliament makes. So it is not our parliament, it is your parliament, it is serving you. And therefore, we see what we call impunity right from the beginning. And I said that this scene, this act is going to give us the exposure to the conflict. The conflict is we do not only have corruption and misuse of power, we have that impunity where the birds who are in power can do whatever they want, whatever they please. In fact, Red String says that rules are made to be broken. Rules are made to be broken by who? It is not by the other birds, but by the owls. The owls can break the rules as they wish. So we see the way Red String is described here as he comes in is a bird with a protruding stomach. It is symbolic of power. It is symbolic of gluttony. It is symbolic of riches and accumulation or amassing of wealth. The conversation between the two birds reveal the deeply ingrained, the deeply rooted injustice within the kingdom. The owls, under the guise of protecting the birds, guise is under the pretense of protecting the birds from other predators. A predator is an animal that can kill another either for food, an animal that can hunt another one or destroy another one. So that's a predator. So the owls are saying, we want to protect you from the predators like this. But in the process of doing that, they have been systematically oppressing the other birds, breaking their own laws by appearing before dusk, as we have seen with Red String. Remember, this action of breaking the law has been brought initially at the beginning of this play, so that we are set in the mind that this play is about impunity. This play is about misuse of power. This play is about oppression. This play is about dictatorship. It's only a dictator who will say that you will follow the law, but I am not obliged to follow the law. So we see Red String breaking the same rules, the same laws that their parliament, your parliament, makes. And they are looting coffers of the birds' kingdom. To loot means to steal without mercy, pick without being given. They are looting the coffers. Coffers are is as a place where we put money. So it's like a bank, okay? The coffers, the funds, the reserves, the capital, the resources of the birds are being looted by the ones in power. Red String in this particular scene or this particular act announces that there's yet another law that is going to be put in place. The Parliament is going to put a law that is going to check the freedom of the other birds. We are told on page 7 that we want to push forward supervision and roll calls hour from 10 p.m. to 6 p.m. and let the exercise run until midnight. Why? Because that is the time their evil is being propagated. Similarly, we also see that there will be another law, or there is another accompanying law where the taxes will be increased. That tax is going to be, or to enable, that is on page 8. Registering is saying, wait a minute, Telltale clears his throat. Now that the owls will spend longer hours supervising and taking the roll call, we expect that all birds shall contribute a daily moonlight tax to enable members of our great parliament, note the word use, the use of the word great parliament, to perform their duty protecting the kingdom. So there is, they're not just bringing a new law to check on the freedoms of the birds, but they are also bringing a new law that is going to be what they are calling the moonlight tax. So these laws are being brought to bring more oppression, to reduce the freedom of the other birds in order for them to, for the owls to be given enough space to do their looting. The law that imposes moonlight tax on the birds is supposedly to increase supervision. However, this is a trick to further control and exploit the birds. Telltale, another bird, is being coerced into spreading propaganda. Propaganda is false information meant to misguide. So he is supposed to spread propaganda about this moonlight tax, that it is about a tithe that is to the gods. So he is supposed to spread that among the other birds so that it is a little bit acceptable. But the threat does not touch Telltale, because he has already been betrayed before by the same. So remember that Telltale has been the telltale, the telling bird, the announcer of the bidding of the owls. But now he has realized that I am being misused. So he tells registering that I can no longer do this, and therefore you look for another way. Just then we see Aramtidi coming in and accepting the responsibility. And Aramtidi talks about if we do not convince the birds, we should confuse them. So there is that element of making sure that the information that is supposed to be passed to the birds is passed to the birds. At a hook or crook, they are going either to be convinced or to be confused. That's a political system or a political strategy where the oppressed are either confused or convinced. The act sets the stage for the unfolding drama. Note that the stage is now set for the unfolding drama, because this is the intensification. It is the peak of what we are calling the struggle, because this is the straw that broke the camel's back. That you have been oppressing us before. We have united in other bills, but in this one we are not going to accept. So this is the peak of it all, where you are introducing the reduction of the freedom of the people, let me not use the word people so that you don't get confused, of the birds. And it is imperative, therefore, that the ones who are struggling for freedom must escalate their actions. In the second act, we see that we are taken to Parliament. So the setting is in Parliament. And we are told Parliament is in session under the moonlight. Images of owls flying under the new moon from the background of the stage. Male owls hoot relentlessly, followed by loud laughter and shrill voices of female owls. The noise degenerates into a shouting march, pandemonium, silence. The stage opens with Moneyberg seated. So this is a setting of Parliament. This is a setting of Parliament, and this is where the laws are being made. And this is where we will see the debate of the Moneyberg Bill, or what they are calling the Moonlight Bill. So not even the structuring of Parliament is loop-sided. It favors the owls. Moneyberg is not only a member of Parliament, but also the Speaker. And therefore, he is not going to allow the opposition or any opposing voice to succeed in this particular battle. So that is what happens in Parliament, and eventually the Parliament passes this law and it becomes a law. So from a bill we go to a law. So the birds are no longer going to be free. The act illustrates the corruption that takes place there. There is a corrupt nature of the owl's governance, where the decent voices are crushed and the laws are passed to serve the interest of the ruling class. The act ends with plans for a celebratory party. Arumtidi is a royal bird who is going to be sent to spread the propaganda and make sure that the bill is acceptable among the populace, among the birds. We go to Act 3, which focuses on the aftermath of passing the bill, the Moonlight Bill, and it starts with a very tense moment, a very sober moment, just like in Act 1, where Arumtidi has been killed. Remember, Arumtidi is the one who has been spreading the propaganda about the new bill. Yet he has been killed by the same people or the same birds who had sent him. His death is caused by very owls he served. But we see the three birds, Osogo, Telltale, and Ochongorio, at the graveside mourning the death of Arumtidi. But not because of Arumtidi, but because of this trend of killing birds is becoming too much. The three birds reflect on the betrayal and the treachery within the kingdom. And we see treachery simply means deceit. It means betrayal, disloyalty. So we are talking about the tricks that have been used to control the kingdom, the treachery within the kingdom, the betrayal within the kingdom. If Arumtidi can be killed by the same birds who have been using him, then there is no one who is saved. Recognizing the old strategy of creating insecurity among the birds, they feel that it is time to act even further. So they do not want this oppression to be justified. So The act exposes the growing resistance among the birds. That's why I said there is escalation of the resistance in this act. So the act exposes the growing dissent, the growing resistance among the birds, fueled by the realization of the owl's deceit and that no one is safe. Osogo remains hopeful despite the overwhelming odds. Yes, we are oppressed, but I feel as Osogo that we are going to manage, we are going to overcome. This symbolizes the undying spirit of resistance. Little P, another bird, brings the news of the owl's continued manipulation, including the tricking of the vulture and the crows, and the introduction of the law of bird protection, which grants the owls even more power. So there is further information here about the involvement of the crows and the involvement of the vultures in the whole business of bringing further oppression on the birds. Then we go to Act 4. The rebellion now intensifies. And this again is escalation of the fight for freedom. There is a growing discontent among the birds, which begins to manifest as open rebellion. So initially they were just talking, now it has become a rebellion. The act marked by increasing tensions. There's a lot of tension with the owls becoming more paranoid. Who is a paranoid person or a paranoid bird? Because here we are talking about birds. They are distrustful. They are suspicious. They are fearful. And they are obsessed with any form of opposition. So they are paranoid. They are distrustful. And they become even more oppressive. So they distrust anybody and they become more oppressive. And that increases the tension. Moneybags, haunted by his dreams, remember that Moneybag has a dream and he's seeing things that are not real. He's hallucinating. And the fear of losing power. Moneybag is a very key character in this story, and he has a lot of power. He has the power in parliament. He has the power in his resources. He is actually controlling the royal owl fully. He becomes more ruthless in his attempts to suppress the dissent. The act portrays the owl's desperation as they realize that their hold on the kingdom power is weakening. In Act 5, we can call it the fall of the owls. The owls are now going to fall. In this act, it is a culmination. It is the apex of the rebellion. The other birds have ganged against the owls, and the owls are on the receiving end. The rebellion is led by a female bird, Oyundi, who, despite being appointed at one point, she is appointed to parliament and given the task of simplifying the laws for day birds, decides to join the resistance or refuses to play ball. She refuses to be manipulated by the royal owl. The act ends with a sense of impending change as the birds kick out through the information that is given to the royal owl. Moneybag is exposed as not only an oppressive bird, but also a traitor to the royal owl. And he is arrested and he is thrown out. And then the royal owl thinks that because he has thrown out the Moneybag, he is going to be accepted. But birds refuse, and he is eventually thrown out because his beads no longer have power. Why? Because Oyundi soaked the beads where the body of Arumtidi was found, And therefore, the beads that have been holding him to power, the beads that have been giving him the wisdom to rule, have lost their power. And then we also learn in this act that the main torturer in this play, that is the python, has been killed or has died because he ate rotten flesh from the dead birds. So we see that everything that has been holding him, that is the royal owl, to power, has crumbled, and eventually he crumbles with the system. And that leaves the birds now to appoint the one that is going to head them, that is going to lead them, and they pick Oyundi, the bird. Oyundi is now takes power, but he wants to introduce a new system that he calls democracy. The regime finally falls. In conclusion, Parliament of Owls is a powerful political allegory, as we have said, that critiques or criticizes the nature of power and corruption. Through the use of birds as characters, the playwright highlights the struggle of birds in the oppressive state into power by bringing down the tyrannical regime or dictatorial regimes. The manipulation of laws to serve the interests of the ruling class is brought out, and there is eventual rise of resistance. The play ends with a statement that it is not yet over, but there is hope. And on page 129, we are told the mood of uncertainty, because we do not know what is going to happen next. The birds sing softly in a fading tone. So though Oyundi has become the monarch or has become the queen, then we expected that there is going to be a celebration, but the play does not end with celebration. It is a new beginning, but we do not know how this beginning is going to end. That brings us to the end of our session today. I wish to leave you with a discussion question. That the allegory Parliament of Owls is a powerful criticism of oppression of any authority. Discuss. Goodbye, and until the fifth lesson, I wish you